Welcome everyone to the SMITE Pro League Season 8 here, powered by Alienware. Of course, we want to thank Alienware for coming on board and helping us here in Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. You're going to want to go if you're looking for a computer that can, give you better graphics, really good computing power, good CPU, irresponsible even amount of RAM is what I will say there that the pros are playing with, at least as of right now. 64 gigs. I don't know if anybody truly needs that, but you can get it if you go to smitegame.com/alienware and use code SMITEAW. Mifflin, first off, those PCs do actually blow my mind, and that says something. I have a computer science degree. I work with those things, or at least I used to. They're good. Either way, moving forward today, we're in group stage. Also really good, really interesting stages and games that happened yesterday. Group B may be proving to be a little more interesting just because of maybe the weight that the Scarabs losing to the Warriors had. Later, we're going to be able to watch the Dragons going up against the Kings. But the very beginning here is the Titans versus the Valkyries kind of making up the rest of the Group A. That is the Leviathans and the Bolts. That's what happened yesterday. 2-1 there for the Bolts and then a 2-0 win for the Warriors. And this group stage is kind of putting pressure onto people. You can see it, but you need to not be number 4 in order to go on.
Yeah, I think that this first set of the day, the Tartarus Titans up against the Valhalla Valkyries, is going to be a very sneaky, important set. It's going to be one of the must-wins for both of these teams going forward because the Olympus Bolts, kind of on a heater, just beat the Leviathans, and you better believe the Leviathans are not going to take that sitting down. They're going to be going full throttle throughout the rest of the week inside of Group A. So if the Valhalla Valkyries or the Tartarus Titans want to, this is one that they really need to win if they don't want to be that bottom seed.
That's a scary thought I had never thought of. I think it's on Thursday, I believe. It's going to be Leviathans versus Titans going into next week. Like, that's the first Leviathans matchup. The Valkyries will have to play them a little later in the week. No matter what, like you said, that is very scary. Like, that's not a team I want on fresh off of a loss. It'll be interesting to see how things are going to be going for them. But because we've looked at that and specifically how today's been going, let's look more at these Valkyries. They have not had a lot of success the way that they would want and the way that they have shown capabilities to. Like, they've won a few games and they've looked really good in a few games, but they have also not quite cracked the code to being able to get, sequential wins over and over again.
Yeah, I think that the Valkyries are going to be benefiting from some slight changes in the meta between the last time we'd seen them. There's been some shell nerfs, which is going to play very well to Johnny's Godpool back at the SCC level. My man was slam-locking auto-attack junglers literally every match, so we might get to see him do that a little bit more so now that Shell doesn't have block stacks on it anymore. Outside of that, I think that you're right to say that the Valkyries have not been able to really form up and work together as a team too much so, but with veteran leadership out of iRaffer, I think as the weeks go on, this team is only going to continue getting better. And that doesn't mean that individual players haven't been looking strong. Ducky, in particular, has been a standout so far this year, been holding his own against some of the best to have ever done it. Zero's occasionally showing flashes of greatness out of mid. The Valhalla Valkyries are a team that I think is wrought with potential.
I mean, look at it. You go to game 1 when they played the Dragons earlier this week, and it was a really, really good game for them. And the fact that they brought out I think it was the Neath Chronos that really kind of drove things home. They were playing the Gilgamesh a few times. You saw those in the highlights, but it really was that Neath Chronos, like Neath kind of carrying Chronos to the late game, then Chronos literally carrying everything else from there, that made things such a huge pivot in their favor in game 1, to the point where I'm looking at it, the bans for the Dragons were Athena, then Neath. Neath was their second ban the next 2 games, and that kind of begs to question whether or not the Titans are going to be willing to make adjustments like that, right? Like being able to say, you know what, we'll let, say, a Tiamat through, we'll let one of these top picks through, because we know it's not going to be as good as X, Y, or Z that you just played against us. Of course, they only have to adapt if they don't win, Mifflin. The Titans, on the other side of this conversation, have been on the up and up. Maybe not as clean overall. They did have just that loss to the Bolts, but they kept it pretty close with the Bolts there, 3-game set on Friday, and they've been looking better and better each time we see them.
Yeah, the Tartarus Titans were a team that I thought was going to be one of the top 3 in the league, just coming in looking at name recognition alone. And they do stumble a little bit throughout the early parts of the season, but as it's gone on and in recent weeks, it really does feel like they've gotten their stuff together. Particularly the duo lane has been looking a lot stronger in the first couple weeks of play. I mean, I'm not going to mince words here. Cyclone Spin and Aurora were not having the greatest go of it, but recently they really have been able to find that dominance in lane. It feels like they've been really playing around it. In the last 2 sets, we've got to see Cyclone Spin play. He's been consistently finding 2, 3 level leads in the side of that Hunter role. So I think the Tartarus Titans strategy today should really be revolving around playing around their strongest pieces, and recently that's been in the long lane.
It's going to be really big, I think, for both of these. Like the long lane, as you had mentioned, like Cyclone Spin Aurora versus Imolito Raffer, right? At least Aurora versus Raffer we saw a lot last year. Depending on what Imolito we see, right? Shades of Season 2 in that first game against the Dragons where things just looked good. It was kind of a fresh reminder why the NRG Chronos skin exists because of him. And then it kind of fell apart. And if we get the Jingwei has lost 6 of the 8 games, I think now a little bit more than that after what we saw on Thursday, that Imolito is not going to have a very good time up against what I presume is going to be a pretty decent looking, potentially Chiron, maybe a Medusa, weirdly enough, there for Cyclone Spin. I mean, do you think that the Hunters are going to be like the thing to watch here?
Well, the thing to watch insofar as where the leads might be established, but if Emilito plays Kronos or Jingwei, well, you better believe he's going to be playing passive throughout the early game. Cyclone Spin himself, although has been able to find leads consistently inside the lane, it's not off the back of looking for solo kills. He's not an aggressive style hunter like Yarkor. Instead, it's more so about, all right, I think I can steal purple buff here. Oh, I'm going to control the camps. Oh, this Greater Scorpion in lane is mine as well. It's going to be more about the macro game inside of the long lane. If we're talking about action, I'm keeping my eyes on the junglers. Both Scary D and Johnny like to get involved early, and maybe that's just my jungler bias just rolling through here a little bit.
And Johnny, I think, is someone that really deserves to be talked about for multiple reasons. One, I mean, after a great last year, it does seem like so far the onboarding here hasn't necessarily gone the way that he would want. A lot of good picks of his that unfortunately either were competitively banned because of issues like Loki, where he was doing really well with early on, and others that at the time, at least with the Shell, they just didn't work too well, especially in this kind of competitive setting where if you win an auto attack assassin, people just build up 3 shells, that's 6 block stacks, it was easy. But now your Mercuries we've started to see kind of on the rise. That came out of the Dragons, I believe, a little earlier this week. But, you know, the Bakasuras, the Kalis, all of these other auto attack kind of, at least gods that my mind immediately drifts to when I think of Johnny being available, makes it seem like it should start to be a good meta for him. They just have to get their feet under themselves and kind of figure out what their draft style needs to be. And admittedly pretty quick. Like you said, this is a very important matchup for him to win.
Yeah, this is I would classify it as a must-win for both of these teams here because no one else inside of this group is going to make it easy for them. These guys were considered 2 of the more low-seeded teams inside of the group, so you have to take that one up against each other. But to speak to your point there, Gore, Johnny's God pool in the SEC was Ao Kuang, Bakasura, Kali, Arachne at times, just all auto attack centric. Well, now that Shell's gotten nerfed, he's going to look a lot better going forward.
Well, it's one of those things I'm excited to see. I forgot the Arachne existed. But you know what? One thing that Johnny did was look good on it no matter what. Granted, maybe the SCC comes through and makes him look good, but if you want to look good, at least at home, also in-game by gyms, if you want to look good at home, though, or just in your regular day-to-day life, go to shop.smiteproleague.com. There's hoodies, there's t-shirts, there's jerseys, customizable. You can put your tag as well as the role that you want onto that jersey and support your favorite team. It is worth reminding you that all of the proceeds do go straight to the players here, and so it's very helpful when you buy their merch for them, but you also get to go out and rep your favorite team, some of your favorite players, and I'm sure they appreciate it if you tweet them on Twitter as well. I mean, go ahead, throw us on there at SmitePro, because sometimes you can be mentioned on the broadcast if we have one. I don't think we have one available for it right now. Just making sure you do that for the future. And speaking of the future myth, this is a set that, like you had said, in my mind, translates very similarly to what we saw Scarabs and Warriors before, and that is that it is very, not just necessary, but like, if you do not win this, it might just all come crumbling down for you. Like, this might be the set that is the establishing point for your ability to get into groups, same way that it was for the Warriors yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like speaking overly definitively, but I'm going to pull a full Stephen A. Smith here and say whoever loses this set is very likely to not make it through the group stage. That's how stacked up this group is. That's how much importance I'm putting on this set in particular. That's why I think all the fans at home should really keep their eyes peeled and pay attention to this one. Valhalla, Valkyries, and Tartarus Titans likely have their LAN performance on the line here.
If I'm being honest, I threw it to you because I wanted just a smidge of time to go look it at. Week 4, so the last week of play we had quite literally before this was when these teams played against each other, and it was a 2-0. It was a 2-0 there for the Titans. But the interesting thing, I'm looking towards like the picks and bans that they had there. First off, Chang'e showed up there. I think we can ignore that part. The Daji is what kind of stood out to me. Someone that, at least for the first half of this phase, didn't feel like a god or a goddess that would come through and really be able to dominate as much. You know, we got to see adapting to it a few times last year, but with things like Geb, with the way Shell had worked, with all of the CC immunity that exists in the game for especially the team they had been playing at the time, or the draft that the Titans had, it was not as great. But and this reflects maybe more specifically, I know I'm harping on Shell a lot, but because this is a pick that we've seen Johnny go to, do you think that really opens the door for Daji? And this is perfect timing for it because we're about to go into picks and bans, so give me your thoughts on it.
I thought that Daji was going to see a lot more play the very second that Shell nerf came through. It's something me and Aggro agreed on, and it's not often that Aggro and I agree on a lot of things, but so far I haven't seen the exact amount of emphasis on Daji that I thought we would. But this game in particular, I think, is going to be a good indicator on how Johnny's feeling about that pick. So we know he was willing to play it pre-nerf, so post-nerf, you better believe he should be a little bit more comfortable on it.
Well, now they're locking or banning out Sobek here. Tiamat there from the Valkyries. Now, this is the thing that was interesting, and I think this is a conversation we had last year a lot, specifically going in on Yamoja was the topic of conversation. Jake, inbound, at the time, did not necessarily have that Yamoja under their belts, and so it was something you didn't have to ban against them. The Valkyries tried playing this Tiamat early on when she became available, and didn't look too hot with it. Now they're the team that's forced to ban it. It almost has a similar vibe to me where they haven't quite been able to maybe bring it to fruition, make it look as good. Plus, when the Titans are first pick, you don't want them to have it. The other thing that catches my eye here, Myth, is that Neath ban. I think the Titans did their homework based on what they saw earlier this week.
Yeah, that might throw a wrench in the works. Emelito's Kronos might get locked up by that Neath ban coming through, and we know Johnny's been enjoying the Gilgamesh, so Titans banning out that one as well. Targeted bans through and through from the Order side team here. Look, I think that Kronos can still work out. It's not like Neath mid's the only option. You could go towards something like an Ull out of mid. We saw that a little bit back in Season 6. In Season 7, we would occasionally see maybe Dardas take on her in a mid or something along those lines, so the Valkyries still have potential to go towards that strategy, but it is definitely going to take a hit. The global presence is going to be certainly missed if they do want to take the Kronos.
And it's something that is just a dangerous pick outright, right? I mean, anytime you lock in something like a Kronos, you are kind of committing to a very time commitment game, right? Not just to make puns on what he's the god of, but literally you need some time to make sure things are good for you. You have some good early game potential in the sense that you are able to keep yourself safe, might even with the help of some others get some kills, but you don't get to see the true strength of a Kronos until he is way beyond that point. So something that if they do lock it in, I at least personally expect to see it a little bit later. The Yanis first pick. Now this is something, I'm just going to look through the games this week. I think we have seen Yanis in the top 2 bans most games, not every single game. He got through. The Titans and the Bolts let him through a few times. And it looks like literally every other game he has been pretty much banned out here. How do you feel about him being first picked?
I think Yanis makes sense, right? Zeros has a Yanis in the back pocket. We know Paul was able to make some pretty miraculous plays last time we saw him play. But instead, Gore, I'm going to go ahead and ignore the question and instead highlight these top 2 selections from the Valkyries. Normally, second pick in Season 8, pretty good, because there's a lot of things in the meta that you have to ban out, or you can't because there just aren't enough bans. but instead it's Sun Wukong and Fafnir taking in the first slot. King Arthur is out there, Heimdall is incredibly strong. There's a lot of top picks that are still available, and they go ahead and forego it. And instead, for these comfort picks, Fafnir is not a contested pick right now. Sun Wukong is not a contested pick right now. You know what are contested? Yanis, King Arthur, and Athena. The Tartarus Titans are getting away with an insane draft. The Valkyries just gave it over.
And it's one of those things like Wukong, Fafnir, like you said, they're not necessarily bad picks. They're just not highly contested top two, I'm going to pick these before you can get anything else picks. King Arthur and Athena literally just feel like blanket upgrades from the top two there from the Valkyries. Chiron locked in. We've seen him once this week because it was Venenu flex over into that mid role. I think it's something that we've seen Zeros play in the past, but potentially feeling that out for Emilito. And I'm going to ask you this one just because Emilito, again, he's been playing mostly Jingwei. I'll go and get like the other stats, but Jingwei's literally at the top. Other than that, it drops to a couple of on her games and maybe a few others here and there. Heimdall kind of scattered throughout. Is this Chiron, do you think, something that he's going to be able to pick up? It was pretty prominent back when he played. Is it something that he should be able to kind of pilot the same way, or were they hoping, as the Titans view it, to maybe pair that alongside a Kronos, similar to the way they paired the Neath?
I think it was the potential of flex for Emilito to go back towards the Kronos, but as for his ability to play Chiron, I think it's going to fit his playstyle pretty well. He likes to play those passive early game gods. Chiron, a little bit more aggressive, has the potential to get aggressive, but also with a recent buff to his dash, making him knock-up immune, means that he can play an incredibly safe role, has death immunity to the ultimate as well, so he should be able to utilize the safety there. But the Tartarus Titans, undeterred, calling the bluff, saying, we think Emilito wants to play a magical hunter, and instead immediately bans out the Kronos and Soul. That tells me they really do think this Chiron's heading towards mid.
Well, it's one of those very smart plays, potentially, from the Titans, or two bans that ultimately, ideally, technically, do also hit Zeros a little bit. So, theoretically, you can kind of flex around with it. Set locked in there. This Freya's being hovered. I have no idea where to go with this one, and I think we'll look at it if it gets locked in. The Valkyries, though, Set, a big conversation piece early on this year, a big conversation piece at the end of last year. He's almost always been a big conversation piece, and now we can throw him by the wayside because something more interesting and shiny is in front of us. Kernanos, just locked in here, Mifflin. Give it to me. What's he got?
He's got a decent dash, a giant AoE CC ultimate that should act as a decent beads burner to make it easier for Confound to find its way home, or even Ragnarok ultimate finding its way home as well. I think it's nice as a little boost to the CC potential on the side of the Titans. We've only seen it once so far this year, and it was Zapman playing it on the side of the Scarabs, able to find a win on it. We'll see whether or not the Tartarus Titans can keep that legacy going. I think that it fits this draft pretty well, but not many things wouldn't fit this draft just because of the core three they got in that first phase of picks.
Well, and it's one of those things, not only did Zapman win with it, he won with it versus the Valkyries there, so definitely something to kind of keep in mind. As we move forward, Fenrir as well, been a very, very highly contested pick, banned a lot from certain players. And I can, pass that through. I would argue at least 3/5 of the Titans is the top tier. Fenrir follows maybe right behind them, and then Kernanos, just like you said, slots in because everything else, like no matter what you put there, it feels like it should be good. Zhang Kui. What's up? Like, what am I missing? Because I have only seen him lose games, and there has to be some fundamental understanding that I'm missing out on. I know the Nemesis has definitely given him some trouble. Is the fact that she's not here going to make this Zhang Kui look really good?
It should make him look better. I don't know that really good can necessarily be said here. Zhang Kui is a close-range mage that has consistent damage, but if you take a peek at the Valkyries draft now, as far as burst goes, it's going to be completely up to Chiron ultimate come late game and sets burst damage with the skewer, because Zhang Kui, well, he goes in, he turns into a tank, and he starts spitting out ghosts for 5-6 seconds, doesn't really have the greatest burst potential, and when he does get in range to find the second or third ability for burst, well, he's committed his body even further, but not having any defense shred on the side of the Titans outside of King Arthur means that it should be a little bit more consistent of a pick. But I'm not the biggest Zhang Kui apologist here. I don't think that he's all that strong right now. I much prefer seeing these long-range artillery-style gods. But if you take a peek at Zero's god pool in the past, it kind of has a similar play style to the Chang'e, who wants to get in and act as that battle mage. So if anyone's going to be able to perform on it, I think Zero's can.
This is something, and if I remember correctly, Recall Demons, the Zhang Kui ult, does not have CC immunity anymore. I think
No.
there was a time where it did, and that's what my mind wanted to conflate, saying, oh yeah, that's really good. Fenrir's not going to be able to pick him up. And then immediately I was like, that would have been true 5 years ago, 6 years ago, like forever and a day ago. But that's another thing to kind of look at here. This Fenrir is gonna have a really good time. There's not a lot of survivability, at least in terms of his ganks. Like Chiron being able to immune knockups in his dash is great. Fenrir doesn't knock you up, he's just going to be able to chase you down. Do you think that they're going to struggle up against this dog and everything that he's going to be able to bring with those ganks?
It's more so about the peripheral CC on the side of the Titans. Sure, Fenrir has great targets for the ultimate, but if their beads are up, it's not going to work out. It's whether or not this Athena is able to get involved and burn away that CC immunity, if the Cernunos is able to do the same. But outside of that, once the beads are burned, Fafnir is an incredibly easy target. Turns into the dragon, keeps himself still, very easy to line up the Ragnarok ultimate and drag him further out of position. They've got decent damage output on the side of the Titans, enough so that I think with the help of Asunder, they should be able to shut just about anyone down off of that Ragnarok ultimate. Besides that, look man, Set's going to struggle, Zhang Kui's going to struggle, and he's got a pretty bad matchup. If Zhang Kui goes into the ultimate, starts releasing those demons, Fenrir can sacrifice himself, essentially grab him and fly him into the sun, and just take him away from his team.
It's one of those things. It feels, at least from top to bottom, as if the Titans have this one won in picks and bans. I'm excited to see what the Valkyries are able to do. Some good picks over there, but the question is, are they good enough? Let's find out in Game 1.
Thanks so much, Gore and Myth on the desk. Joining me on the broadcast is going to be Aggro for this battle between, well, let's be real, Ryan, two teams that have struggled all year to find consistency.
Yes, consistency has been a problem for both, but I think both have shown some positive trends as of late, particularly the Tartarus Titans, as they've really bounced back from that 0-3 start. But can't really overlook the Valkyries because they're willing to throw different looks at you. This style of composition is one that I expect from the Valkyries. A little bit more off-kilter, a little bit more strange, but really effective nonetheless.
It definitely feels from the Valkyries squad that they've put up here that it's very much a W key composition of everybody's going to be diving in almost at the same time, right? I am a little bit concerned about them having a Yardis and Athena, though, that could really cause some problems up against a whole goon squad running at you. On top of that, you've also got a King Arthur, which is great in those sort of situations too. I do wonder, though, exactly who's going to be the focal point from the Tartarus Titans. Do you focus the Zhang Kui or the Set, or is it just dependent on the situation?
I think that you're going to be looking at each situation a little bit differently, but overall, this Chiron seems to be the man that I'd be going at most of the time. He's just easier to kill than someone like a Zhang Kui. He's going to be a lot more of that consistent damage than someone like the Zhang Kui. Johnny's going to have to be good with his beads in this game because there's a lot of pressure on them between the Fenrir and the Athena and the Kernanos. Though Kernanos is a character that really stops dives very effectively if that diver doesn't have purification beads. That's why I like the Kernanos pick up against the Set quite a bit. If you don't have those beads available and maybe that cleanse isn't there from Emilito, could be in trouble.
Well, a bead a little bit late there from Johnny, but didn't really help him out of the danger zone whatsoever there. The Paul was just off the mark from Paul in mid, but the beads being down means there's another opportunity if they do catch him in the next minute or two in the jungle. And just keep an eye there on Aurora, who did start Blink this game up against the Sunder of Ratha. So as this game goes on, expect to see some Blink taunt initiations. A lot of focus towards beads burners this game with that Athena and the Fenrir too, as Aurora still sticks to the dual lane for the time being, started Benevolence alongside that of Ratha too. So both of them just trying to make sure their teammates get a bit of an advantage early.
Yeah, but Aurora goes with the glowing emerald to start off, which is a little bit surprising because one of the strong parts of support right now is that you get to just back and buy your boots really early. This slows down Aurora's boots pretty considerably, and you might be wondering why Raffer doesn't have any boots right now. It's because he's leveraging that Fafnir passive. Remember, Fafnir gets protections based on his gold that he has in pocket. So by not spending the gold on boots, you get tankier, though you lose that movement speed, of course. I know Hazer is somewhere very happy to see Raffer not buy those boots, but he's still going to be able to back and buy them pretty quickly. He's already got his boots 2 done. It looks like he actually went Hand of the Gods, which Raffer has been doing in these situations. He goes back and buys another hog before the next purple buff invade in order to prevent it from being successful for the other side.
And I don't mind that idea too, you know, the support being able to get a hog now and again against pressure that you're seeing here in this duo lane. I think the more important thing is what we see out of Chiron generally is this level 2 star. But Johnny getting aggressive at this blue buff after taking some back harpies and gets pinned in by Benji walking around the corner for first blood. And first mistake made. Ducky's here though to do some damage back. And she gets a kill in return. That was way more damage than bargained for.
Yeah, some damage is right. Wukong's still pretty good, by the way. Benji does a good job of crippling out Johnny, making sure he couldn't teleport with the Sandstorm. I think he might have been out of mana anyways, but ends up really preventing that from escape from going off, gets the first blood, and then thinks, no way, Ducky's going to disrespect me by hitting me this whole time, but wasn't really disrespect. It was just the damage necessary.
Ducky doing a good job there, just to even things out for a second. I mean, I don't think Benji will be too upset considering he did get first blood, so has the bonus gold to get his full boots online. As we check him with the duo lane now, Valhalla Valkyries getting double taunted, and Amelito's going to charge away. Rafa taking a ton of damage too as Aurora charges in. There won't be a kill there, but you can just see the pressure that can come from this double taunt from Athena if she gets the window to do so.
Certainly a lot of damage, and Kurtanos is only going to ramp up a little bit more. The Bluestone start here for Cyclone is interesting to me. You've got two abilities that apply it really easily between your 2 and the dash. Dashing aggressively is always risky, but Chiron is not one of those hunters that will necessarily punish you super hard for it. A lot of the time, his damage is a little bit over time, and the all-in from Kurtanos is very, very strong. You'll see good Kurtanos players maxing their dash before the Shifter of Seasons pretty much every single time because you could cancel that dash really quickly. You use it as an auto-cancel that just adds in like 280 damage to your combo, which makes the all-in with Bluestone that much better.
Well, you just saw the hammer come out there from Rafa onto Scary D on that left-hand side. The ward placement, the pings, just showed Valkyries exactly where that jungler was this season. How do you feel about Scary D so far and how he's doing? Hang on, hold that. We'll come back to that because it looks like Johnny might be doing the same thing, but there's no wards here for the Titans to know this is going on. Sunder is available for Rafa, and he'll leap in, force an escape. And there's the jump in from Johnny looking towards Cyclone. He is level 6 and he'll get himself a kill. A great little composition there working out for Valkyries. It's a double for Johnny. And meanwhile, on the right-hand side, you can see the invade going on, but great work from the Valks there.
Just good identification that Cyclone was just a little greedy with his back timing. Didn't go back for boots 2. He was still sitting on just Bluestone in the early Morning Star. So you have so much more power and mobility on the set than he can handle.
Well, Ducky needs some mobility. One more attack. We've done it! And the Bluestone tick will be enough. Didn't get the regen through in time. Benji gets credit for the kill as the Goon Squad of Titans group up, and Johnny needs to watch out. He's going to get taunted. Ragnarok's available too. Where's your beads now, friend? Not available. Back to the fountain for you. 3-3. We tied up, and we get a bloodbath in this game.
Man, such a smart play from Benji. He knows that Johnny doesn't have beads. Cyclone does his job, even though he dies on that duo lane gank. He forces the beads from Johnny, doesn't just give up, and that opens up this play. Aurora looking to still stay aggressive, knowing that speed buff was up. It's pretty likely that he's going to be there, and look at this, they found another victim.
And he's got no cloud this time round, so Ducky falls again, reminiscent of what happened to Zapman up against the Leviathans earlier on this week too, as now the Titans start to pull ahead for a second in terms of kills, but it's still all even in gold right now, so it's still anyone's game with how this is going.
And that's another instance where Benji did something that I wanted to talk about on the Johnny kill, so he does it for me again on the Ducky kill. He sets himself in that alternate stance for King Arthur so that he has the cripple available quickly. And knowing that that's the most important thing that he can do, Johnny tried to Sandstorm over the wall before Ragnarok hit him, but because of the taunt and the cripple, he couldn't get over the wall. Ducky likely to use 72 transformations there in order to get away, but can't because Benji's in the right stance and comes in with that cripple, really understanding exactly what his team needs from him. Not the damage in that spot, though, of course, that hamstring does deal a good amount of damage, but more so needing that CC.
Keep an eye on the mid laners this game as it continues, because at the moment, because all the action's on the left and right hand side of the map, the mid laners are going relatively unchecked at the moment, which means they're starting to develop a bit of a lead, and you can see that on Paul now, who's level 9, highest in the game, and Zero's right behind him with this new wave coming in. I expect there's going to be a bit more pressure on these guys, Ryan, with how this one's going on in the side lanes, that these two, one of them is going to have a big game. I just expect it more than likely to be a Giannis over the Zhong right now.
Yeah, it makes sense to me that you don't want to fight around the mid lane if you're either one of these teams, because both mid laners are so difficult to kill for two different reasons. It's the mobility for Paul on the Giannis, of course, and the tankiness of Zeros on the Zhonghui. Why mess with that when you've got a side laner who's ahead in Benji and a easy to gank Chiron or Kernados on the other side for both junglers? You're kind of just wasting your time in the mid lane, and that's why this Giannis Zhonghui matchup is really good for both ends. It's that neither one can really kill the other. You just stalemate out the lane, and both mid laners probably saying, "Oh, it's okay. You know, I'm going to do more come late game. I'm going to be able to outscale and team fight a little bit better." And it really is just a matter, in my mind, of how much work Paul's going to be able to do, because Zhonghui's floor for team fighting is much higher than Giannis's floor.
Well, Titans found a lot of victory on this right-hand side so far. Rafa forced to ultimate as 3 people from Titans dance around, and Valkyries kind of watch on. Good damage from Ducky onto Benji, though. Early summer South Cloud, I don't think it's worth the chase, though, because Paul was here, as was Zeros, making the rotation too. But the blue buff is defended by the Valkyries there on the right-hand side. A small victory in circumstance, but it did cost him the ultimate there out of Ducky.
And out of Raffer, so 2 ultimates for just defending the buff. Still worth it for the Valkyries, assuming the Titans don't play too aggressively during the time where those cooldowns are down. Zero's playing awfully aggressively in mid, and that's what I like to see in this matchup.
Well, in goes the Ragnarok from Scary D, but Aurora got wrapped around and surrounded. Space in time comes out, doesn't find a target, and into the ultimate goes Rafa. Does he have an escape? He does! The tower shot will follow him, and he's forcing Scary to blink in, but no follow-up available from Valkyries there. Now Ducky in trouble too, is Scary. Looking for the extra kill. Nice little use of the transformations, but not enough. Scary gets himself a double, and now Johnny surrounded, but might be able to turn on Benji. But the extra protections Benji gets from the fight can come back. And as you said, Zero's coming in. But so's Athena!
And Aurora may have just saved Scary's life. He did. Shout-outs to that Defender of Olympus damage mitigation. Scary, of course, calculating that all the way. He knows Zero's likely to be there, but he doesn't need it. He doesn't need to worry about it because he's got Aurora on his way. Oh, don't die to that. Okay.
He won't. I mean, it is on the same team as Benji, to be fair, but it can't happen 2 years
I know.
in a row, surely, right?
I flashed back to it instantly.
I saw it for a second, too. 6-4, then, on the standings, as we're about 600 gold in the lead for the Titans as we approach the 10-minute mark in the game. But you can see the experience. It's nothing major here, Ryan. It really is a back and forth, and I guess when you start looking at the mid to late game, is there a team that you feel better about scaling-wise?
I think Valhalla Valkyrie's composition, as you highlighted earlier, is really good at just pressing the gas pedal and getting in there in the team fights. But if Paul can use that through space and time as a disengage tool for himself and multiple members of the Titans, you know, Zeros pops that ultimate, instantly Paul just ults away and gets some people to the other side of a wall and sets up an easy team fight for them. Yeah, this is just Raph being Raph, you know?
You see, I'm not as big a fan of this as he's going to use the ultimate, or it doesn't matter. Like, the rest of the team wasn't nearby. That's a terrible mistake. I'm not gonna say anything different than that. I just don't know why he's there at that point in time, especially when rotations were potentially available, people missing on the map. So Rafa falls down there for his second time, and this gives Tartarus Titans a bit more pressure to invade this right-hand side of the map again. Luckily enough, though, I mean, blue buff's already down, but they still lose quite a bit of experience from those harpies.
Yeah, you're not going to be in a good position as Fafnir once you start falling super far behind. I mean, supports always can deal with getting less farm, but Fafnir's one that really likes getting ahead.
Oh, space and time did connect there from Paul, but as he jumps through the portal, he turns tail because Johnny's there. Aurora coming in, but a little bit too late. Scary goes down to Zeros and the burst damage. The ghosts come through, but Paul does at least take out Johnny to make that a 1-for-1 exchange as Rafa re-enters the fray without his ultimate now. Hammer connects. Don't think they're going to have the damage to kill Aurora at this stage, however, with just the Zhonghui's exorcism in the mid lane. And funny enough, left-hand side. Great job from Cyclone here, Aurora, catching back up in experience. Why did I call you Aurora, not aggro? I don't know why.
I don't know, but that's a great compliment, and I will be taking it.
I wish I was with Aurora. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I wish you were with Aurora too. I mean, that everyone would enjoy that a little more. But I'm here. I'm doing my best to just bring the Aurora energy to everything that I do. Look, I just think that last skirmish is so much better for the Valkyries and the Titans, though, because Scary comes into that fight 4-0 and leaves 4-1, and Johnny still staying pretty close to that experience, still gets a little bit of that extra bounty. So overall, I think the Valkyries should be pretty happy with that last trade.
Cyclone, no real messing around in that wave, just pokes it and runs back to the safety of his tower for now. Checking in with builds as well. We've seen a couple of different variations of that Fenrir as of late, Ryan, too. A lot of auto-attack speed focus I've seen for a little while, and then this build at the moment, Hydras and the Jotuns, a bit more of a standard, as you will, sort of Fenrir build. Is there a difference between the two? Is it based off composition you're against?
I think it is mostly based on composition you're against, and the Valkyries are a team that's kind of hard to sit there and auto-attack a whole lot. This build tells me that Scary really wants to use his ult a whole lot. It's more CDR-based. You're trying to use that Ragnarok to put more pressure on purification beads, and I think that makes a lot of sense with the composition the Titans have that burns beads so well and punishes those who don't have beads really well to be more centered around that Ragnarok ultimate, and he gets a little bit more mobility this way. With that stone cutting build, you're really good at standing in your ground and fighting, and that can be good against a lot of different team compositions, but Zhonghui, Set, those are gods that are more than happy to take those types of trades. So I like the adjustment from Scary, because we've seen much more of that stone cutting build than this type of build as of late.
Well, Paul's pulled about a level ahead right now in that middle lane on that Giannis pick so far, just continuing to farm up and be in the right position at the right time. But his Valkyries grouping up around the Gold Fury right now just to make sure they get those oracles for the time being, give themselves a bit of vision. As Scary D is now on the hunt to the left-hand side, but as you can see by Doug pointing out there, ward coverage is good from the Valkyries right now, just to keep an eye on these rotations.
Still, it's not like either team has great burst potential on these objectives. This is the Titans looking to force a fight, not necessarily confirm the objective.
It's down quick, though. Look how quick that Fury's going down. No one's here in time, and Titans will get it. Rafa now surrounded by multiple members, but the taunt didn't really do much out of Aurora there. Rafa dashing in, going to get the stun onto Scary D, but no further follow-up available. Zeros, though, trying to do what he can, but the portals being used defensively there from Paul gets them away from danger and gets themselves that Gold Fury without losing any lives.
Exactly what I was looking for Paul to do. Just use that ultimate as a disengage tool. You don't need to do more than that. Play it nice and simple.
Zeros needs a disengage tool and has one in those beads, but now they're on cooldown. Scary D has to jump away. Benji gets hold of Johnny, though, who's trying to return some damage back towards the Fenrir. And Johnny in the midst of hell, he has to use the Aegis to escape, but the ghosts are causing damage. But is it going to be enough is the question. It looks like it should be. But at the same time, Ducky won't be able to get a Benji, who will still sustain Stone of Gaia to the rescue.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think he missed that Jingu Bang, but it looked like it did no damage, and it's because of the Tank Boots Stone of Gaia combo there from Benji. Look at his HP, dude. What is that? You can't go with the knockup. You got to go with that Tiger Stun if you want to confirm that kill. The fact that he knocks him up just instantly pops that Stone of Gaia passive, a ton of HP regen instantly, and Benji's able to get out of there pretty freely.
Very crazy fight, but I believe it was only a 1-for-1 that, if I'm correct. Or did Rafa die too? No, Rafa did die as well. Apologies for that. Oh, Johnny lived. Yeah, it was a 1-for-1 in that situation, that mid lane. But that was all over a fight towards the Pyromancer, and that's exactly where Titans end up coming out on top again. They get the Gold Fury, the fight in mid lane goes even, but they do have the window to get that Pyro and extend their lead a little bit more now. And they're on the hunt again as Paul's going to try and play some wards down, but Johnny's in the area. They've got to be careful of that too. And a lot of calls on the comms right now will probably be who's got relics available, whose relics are down. And Zhonghui in the mid lane, his relics are down. And guess what? He's like a dog with a bone, shockingly enough. Going to bring Zhong in, but a stun's good to buy some time. What? And he turns it around with the whip around. Great shell usage on a Rafa there just to keep his mid laner alive too. And that makes it 9-7 with Scary falling.
Man, this build coming from Paul, I mean, this is the build that Herwin does all the time. It's a build that I like using whenever I'm playing Giannis, but it has a pretty big weakness, and that's that it has no flat pen in it whatsoever. And Zhonghui being really tanky, getting by way of protection specifically, means that flat pen early makes a big difference, and Paul not having it, I think, is what lets Zeros live in that instance. A great shell coming from Raffer as well. Got to give him credit. He played it really well with the timing on that shell. But without a Sunder quite yet from Aurora, I'd expect he's going to get it once he hits level 12, or once he backs now that he's hit level 12. Without that there, and without any flat pen in the build for Paul, even though he fires off that through space and time, it just doesn't deal quite enough damage.
We've got another minute, so we can have a little look back exactly what happened here. We knew we had no beads or Aegis, so the full combo comes out from the Valkyries, sorry, from the Titans there. But the double stun and the shell into the quick heal that comes off there was huge for him. Didn't use the card there, Ryan, even. Card was on cooldown.
Yep.
But the amount of lifesteal he's got with that Spear of the Magus, which got recent buffs, and those Shoes of the Magi, is enough lifesteal to sustain back up enough to survive.
And that Vamp Shroud, of course, as well. So Zero's definitely pretty tanky. And you're not going to be building anti-heal on Giannis anytime soon. You could build some anti-heal. Yeah, it looks like Benji just got a Pestilence, just trying to get some sort of anti-heal going. The real key, though, is that Aurora just got his upgraded Sunder. And now, with that upgraded Sunder up, Zeros will not be able to survive situations like this in the future. It should be an easy Sunder into a Giannis Unstable Vortex, and that'll be enough to pretty much put him down. This upgraded Sunder is so popular because it just allows you to kill frontline really easily.
It's funny because in my mind, I was kind of looking at the composition Valkyries have here, and I went in my head, I would like to see a Horrific on the side of Titans, because that would really shut down a lot of what this team wants to do, you know? Zhonghui wants to run at you, and two of the ways to really remove Zhonghui, I mean, Shell used to be a great counter to him once upon a time, Nemesis too, but taking him out of combat or not allowing him to move, very, very impactful, but no Horrific on their side, instead this Sunder, so it's very much a single target focus with that in this one.
Yeah, I wonder if Benji really needs beads in this composition. I mean, Arthur's one of those characters that his damage comes off over such a long period of time. He has so many things that are interruptible. If you allow yourself to pre-beads and then get your damage off, a lot of times it does make the difference. But there isn't that much hard CC on the Valkyries. And let's say he gets on top of Zeros, blinks in, and gets stunned off by the Zhonghui. If you blink Horrific Tim, that stun isn't going to make enough of a difference. You're going to be able to catch him either way. So I think that I agree. Upgraded Horrific's so good against Zhong because it reduces his damage over that long duration of the ultimate and makes him a lot slower, which will oftentimes force speeds as he doesn't have any mobility in the kit. I agree. I think I would have liked to see a Horrific for the Titans, but Aurora really does need that Sunder at the same time.
Yeah. That makes sense for where Aurora's gone, you know. I also think Cursed Ankh could be pretty good as well, you know, with a Set and a Zhong and, you know, even Sun Wukong. Like, all of them do
and
have
Chiron
some
passive.
Yeah, they've all got sustain in the kit, actually. You know, even Coerce from Rafa. So, a Cursed Ankh could have been an option too. End of the day, not looked at here. The Primal Fury, however, different story. Bit of a back and forth as Valkyries are here in force. 4 members surrounding it. And I think Titans realise they're not in a right position to do it as on their own. So have to fall back for the time being. The gold lead's only 1,200 though. It was 2k at one point, so you can see Valkyries have battled back a little bit. But this is still anyone's game for my money with how it stands.
Hindu Man, you might have just broken the meta accidentally by suggesting Cursed Ankh. The more I think about it, Chiron passive force heals people around him, and you can't stop it from happening. So if you just force him to use buttons,
scripts, right? Like,
and you curse Ankh the whole team, anytime Chiron presses a button, they're gonna take more. It's like an AoE Sunder for your team. Hindu Man's done it, dude. Okay, it's probably actually bad, but maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe that's something we'll start seeing.
No, listen. That's the classic. Not just against Chiron. Just to be clear, I'm not saying they're just against Chiron, but this whole comp Valkyries have, right? They've got Set, who is very much focused on sustain too. Every single one of these gods has sustain in their kit. And when you've got lifesteal Zeros on Zhonghui, that makes more sense to me to nullify some of that healing. But not only that, make him blow himself up by taking more damage.
Yeah, no, I think it could work. I mean, certainly in this game, it is more than just the Chiron, but that you would need the Cursed Ankh for. But maybe that because Chiron's dominating the meta, maybe that's how. Maybe that's the only way to stop this guy. You just gotta Ankh him so he hurts his whole team.
Well, big dance on this left-hand side now. I think both teams starting to realize that this next fight around the Fury is going to be a big one. You can see the solo lanes have even made their way over here now as well, and for the most part, it's just going to be posturizing for a while. Small advantage, I would say, in favor of the Titans right now, just because they do have a bit of pressure on the right side. I should say Valkyries, because they have that tier 1 already down on the right-hand side. And mainly at the moment, it's Ducky losing a bit of farm over there. But with a little bit of a dance around the left, they all changed their mind. There's a bit of pressure in mid lane for a second. So Titans go, you know what? We can't look at Fury. How about the Pyromancer?
Really surprised that Cyclone Spin has upgraded his Bluestone. I really thought that this was just a bridge sort of starter item, allow him to clear a little bit better early, but he's upgraded it.
All in on a roll, but that was beautiful damage. And Emilito over the wall with a snipe will secure the kill. One of the major beads burners on the side of Titans now down for 35 seconds. But what can Valkyries do with those 35? Is Ducky going in again? Space and time used for Paul defensively. Ducky on the somersault cloud, but where is Scary D? Right round that right-hand side as Ducky's clone keeps them busy. Valkyries open up the window for the tier 1. 20 seconds still on a roar, and I'm noting that intentionally, Ryan, because he can get back into the fray pretty quickly with that ultimate, but it doesn't look like Titans want to contest. Valkyries will get a tier 1, and Valkyries will get a Primal Fury. Although that's a Fire Giant call? No.
I mean, Aurora's coming. Aurora's going to be on the way, but Rafford knows it's happening.
But Raph is already dead, and that's what happens when the amount of... That was insane, the amount of damage he just took there. Blew up in an instant, but he stops the Fire Giant, and that's the main thing they were really after there from Valkyrie's point of view. He will take that tumble back to the graveyard as Ducky gets taken up, brought back down, hit by a taunt, chased on in. The rest of the team still busy doing the Scorpion on the backside from Titans, but the rundown of Ducky begins, and this should be enough to find another kill. And this might open up a Fire Giant attempt, but the damage dealers from Valkyries are here, and their ultimates for the most part are intact, as are their relics. Someone's going to go in soon. Who's it going to be?
Gotta be Johnny. He has that ultimate and his relics still up and available, but it's going to be tough for him to find the angle in. Paul's ult's back up.
Emilito taking a ton of damage. The ghost exhumed from zeros there. Not doing much, just to back away and Skyclone spin. Realizing there's a window there to get in for a second. But the snipes from Emilito! Whoa. Beautiful angle for damage! And that should be forcing back the Titans at least on the barest amounts of health bars. Sure, Johnny died. Sure, Ducky died. Sure, Rafa died earlier. But the Fire Giant still stands. So it's not too bad from the Valkyries' point of view.
No, not too bad, but look at their relic situation, Graham. I mean, they don't have a Beads Aegis to speak of in their backline. I mean, both. Yeah, it cost them really everything. And you got to give so much credit to Benji again on that play. He sets up Ducky, finds that blink in, and takes him up with the Excalibur's Wrath. Then as Ducky is bird forming away, he, what do you know, cripples him on the way out and makes sure that he doesn't get that off, and then that sets up that whole play really beautifully. Emilito's got to do a better job. He cleansed underneath Ducky during Excalibur's Wrath. He's got to save that for a taunt that's coming in or a high-value CC, because losing that training exercise made a big difference.
Well, you called it earlier. Those relics being down on the carries makes it a much trickier situation, and their ultimates too, remember. So the Fire Giant being whittled down now. Ducky has to go in, try and cause some problems, but a taunt out from a roll will slow them down momentarily. Fire Giant is forced to reset. Good work from the Valkyries, but can they just hold enough here? At the moment, they've done enough just to push the Titans away and fall back unscathed.
Yeah, that's crazy that they don't really manage to get more than that. I think that the Titans need to do a little bit of a better job of getting deep vision, and then you should just be using through space and time as a super blink into the backline for Benji and for Scary and for Aurora. Paul instead just kind of blindly fires it, doesn't find anything, doesn't get any value on it whatsoever. Feels like the Titans just lost their patience a little bit in that fight. That fight is so guaranteed for them if they play it right, because of their composition. We've talked so much about how they just punish players without beads over and over and over again. And now it felt like they had too many options at the buffet table, so they just didn't take anything at all. You know, they were too hungry. They couldn't figure out what they wanted.
Which one do I pick up? I want to take the whole plate, really, but then I miss out on these things too. Well, Fire Giant started again, and immediately you can see Paul stepping forward, trying to do some damage. Fire Giant down to half health at the moment as Benji does his best, zoning away the Valkyries. But Valkyries group pretty nicely so far, not really panicking, not forcing the engage just yet, just walking slowly towards the Titans and taking them away from the position of the FG for a moment.
I'm so surprised at how scared Aurora is playing right now. He's got Blink Taunt. Emilito and Zeros are close to one another. You know neither of them have beads. That's the spot you want to be in. I really think it's because Aurora got bursted so hard in mid earlier on that he's a little scared of that Sunder cooldown, but they might not have it because it's down right now for the next 15 seconds. The fact that the Valkyries just had 3 players without a single relic and didn't lose anybody or the Fire Giant is criminal from the Titans. I mean, look, the Titans it did what they could. They tried to force these fights, and the Valkyries responded pretty well. But I gotta believe there was an angle where they could have gotten in there a little bit better than what they did.
I also want to believe that maybe the Titans don't fully know that all those beads were on cooldown, because if they did, I'm sure we would have seen a bit more aggression out of them and realization that they were in a very strong position after the last engagement. But now we're in a sort of, dance again around the FG, and it might be Valkyries who get a bit confident here. You saw Rafa think about it for a second on pulling that FG. But now they're going to step up forward towards Benji, hammer off the mark, and Benji will slip the noose for now. Paul able to farm the mid lane, keep some pressure rolling there for now. Has the space and time, remember, to rotate in, and that's one of the best secures, I would say, in these situations, to use that across the map, or at least maybe counter-steal, pick off a couple of targets, knock people to half health. Neither team really wants to make the mistake here. They both realize that this is the team they have to beat to, in fairness, guarantee themselves, I want to say, a spot into the next stages of playoffs, because I think these are the two teams that are both at the tail end of this group fighting for that third spot.
These are usually the most important ones, the two lowest seeds in group situations like this where only one seed doesn't get to move on. Just feel like the Titans, I mean, you see the difference in the meta of having crit as an option and not having crit, because you look at the builds for these two hunters, upgraded Bluestone Brooch does nothing for your Fire Giant DPS. I mean, you're basically almost wasting an item slot on it when it comes to just objective DPS. Now, it is good enough at hitting gods and making a difference there, but you see the real difference of why the Titans don't feel super comfortable in going for these big plays around the Fire Giant, because you're right that Paul has the best secure on the map, but it's not great still the vast majority of the time. Yeah, it's not easy to time. It's still not, the Kraken or Searing Pain that you really want. And the same goes for the Titans, or the Valkyries rather, because Emilito's going the exact same build that Cyclone Spin is.
Well, speaking of Cyclone, you saw him pull that gold, but at the same time, Valkyries looked at the Fire Giant for a second or two there. Great window, though, for the Titans to take this Primal Fury, and this will help them out a little bit more in securing that FG over time. If they want to, keep taking fights around it, poking it down low, this will increase the damage and reduce how much they're taking from it, too. So not a bad pickup, and Valkyries will realize the error of their ways there by just dancing around this right-hand side of the map. Has given that window to Titans once more, so the gold lead extends a little bit more so, 5k now. But at this moment in time, is 5k across a team really that impactful? We'll see.
No, I don't think it is. We're pretty much even. The main difference here is that you have seen some finished 6th items for both sides, or for the Titans rather, whereas the Valkyries have not. I mean, you're looking at Chin Size done for Cyclone Spin, Emilito still sitting on Light Blade. You've got Paul full 6-item build. Zero's just now upgrading his starter item. Don't think he has. Yeah, he hasn't finished that last one.
Let me soapbox.
Let
me soapbox.
Yeah,
right?
go ahead.
I
I
am so on board that Sacrificial Shroud is the most OP item in these starter items that has been slept on for too long, okay? And like the recent changes to other stuff and the fact there's more lifesteal availability from Spear of the Magus, right? 15% more damage? And you're building lifesteal anyway? So you're not going to feel that 5% of your maximum health. And then you think about that on Zhong Kui with the Ghost, the Recall Demons being available. This is going to chunk. This is potentially one of the most ridiculous items I've seen in a while, and nobody's even talking about it. Especially because it's got protections too. I'm excited to see it more. We'll see how it works out, because knowing me and how many times I've done this before right over the years, it's ended up being wrong or like never happened. But
but this could be your one.
Maybe this is the one. This is the year.
I believe. Sacrificial Shroud is pretty good. I'm with you on that.
Fire Giant below half health. Rafa coming into the pit early. Remember the Primal Fury is in the fray on this one too. Rafa though gets hit, as does Ducky by that taunt by Aurora, and it opens Scary into the back line, who buys a bit of time to separate the back line. Ducky and Ducky on the front line, whichever one's the clone, is definitely the lower health one. But Johnny's in there too. I just saw him whip around the back. Has he found anyone? No is the answer. I just don't think he could get into the mix enough. He's forced out by Benji. Scary gets Ducky after the Somersault Cloud, and now Johnny's Aegis is wearing off. He's got a Magi's, but the damage won't be prevented, and Scary gets a double. The chase is on from the Titans, and it's a rout. Yes, Sacrificial Shroud meant nothing. Cast a curse once again as Rafa becomes a pig for a second, and meanwhile Emilito forced to push mid lane. Scary should get a delayed triple here as the rest of the Titans can fall back. Tell a lie, it's a quadra kill for Scary D, and now a Fire Giant.
Yeah, just such a separated fight there for the Valkyries. And what we've said this whole time is they want to group up in Death Ball. That's what their composition is really good at. But it was really two death, I don't know, they weren't even death balls. They were like little death specks on each end of the team fight. You got Johnny trying to dive in, but he got forced out too low right away. Ducky and Raffer got double taunted as frontliners, and that's never a good start for your fight. It's not an instant ender like it is when your backline gets double taunted, but still lets Paul get off a good chunk of damage before the fight even starts. And Zero's just got completely neutralized that entire fight. I don't know who he was. He must have been trying to fend off Benji on his ultimate, but I didn't see where Zero's ultimate was at all that fight.
Yeah, I didn't really. I think I heard it, but I didn't really see where exactly it landed. I want to give full credit to Scary. He gets the quadra for this, right? But his engagement towards Zeros and towards Emelito kept them so far back that split that engagement so they couldn't run on in. They panicked when Scary turned up, and he gets, you know, the good result for his team. But not only that, credit for the quadra at the tail end too. Fantastic play out of a jungler this year that a lot of people have been talking about. He's been inconsistent, but he's been learning, right? It's taken him time to adapt. And this Fenrir seems to be finding some good for him.
Look, he had some really bad games, but they were bad games at the beginning of the phase. That's okay. You know, that's what you expect. He hasn't had bad game, good game, bad game, good game. It hasn't been this back and forth sort of thing. It's really been some rough games, a good game, maybe a little bit of a less good game, but then continually that bar is being raised every single time. So that's what you're looking for, is just consistent improvement, not making the same mistakes, playing the map a little bit better. And Scary has checked all those boxes for me. And so I think that the Titans fans should be pretty happy with his progression as a jungler. Certainly can't complain about this performance, 10-3 and 6 right now.
Relatively quiet performance from the two hunters so far this game, but they've been there when they needed to be. At least Cyclone has involved in 4 of the kills so far. As Ducky is in a bit of trouble over here because Benji's also lurking around too. So is Johnny though, but I don't think Johnny can really take down the pair of these two effectively. Ducky will be able to get away. Oh, will he? Because Scary will blink in. And now it's Johnny in trouble because Athena's turned up too. He's forced to jump away from the Magi's, but Scary's still giving chase too. And the Fenrir, the man mounted, is too much alongside this Athena. All the while, Cyclone's been taking down tier 2 left, tier 2 mid, looking at a Phoenix, and he can come over to group with his team if he wants to. They're keeping him all busy on the right, opening Cyclone up to get this middle Phoenix, and that's exactly what you want if you're the Titans. Meanwhile, there's still people dying. Emel's close to death. The ghosts come out from Zeros though, but it's not enough to get a kill whatsoever, and Zeros evaporates to Benji, and that could just be game 1.
Yeah, Scary D just has been unstoppable in this one. 12 kills for the man in the jungle. Ronnie looking good to start off the group stages here for the Tartarus Titans.
A definitely interesting balancing act between the teams in the early game though, Ryan. Definitely back and forward. We saw a bit of pressure towards the dual lane, very effective there early on from the Valkyries. But then same can be said from how Titans played the right-hand side of the map.
Yeah, it was really impressive stuff from the Titans early on. Valkyries did a good job of stalling out a lot of these engagements. I thought Raffer, outside of the one obvious mistake in the mid lane, played okay on that Fafnir. That's a pick that he's looked pretty good on as of late. This Zhang Kui pick just isn't doing it for me, man. I mean, he just continues to get bullied in these team fighting phases where he's supposed to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. What, he's 0 for 6 or 0 for 7 now or something like that on picks? Hasn't won a game in the SPL quite yet. I'm ready to move on from that pick.
It's on me for talking about Sacrificial Shroud. That's what it was.
Yes,
I think they would have been different if I didn't do it. I had to soapbox. I'm sorry. But that's it for game 1. We'll be back with game 2 after the break and see if Valkyries can take us to a game 3.
Playing house, this ain't a home with your soul on the road. Say, why you always gotta go? Playing house, this ain't a home with your soul on the road.
See, I've been lost in my thoughts, and my thoughts they too scared to usher off. Sorry, Mom, I just thought you were my world. Now you're not. And I'm just sitting, smoking, sloping in a daze, cause my days ain't been the same since I drove here away. I remember the way you wrote letters in blue ink. You and me was in love. Think about what your crew think. I know your moms probably think I'm a bastard. Your pops probably want to beat my to death and take a in my casket. But I got sick of fighting, bickering, fussing over nothing, cussing. Instead of watching the death of discussions that we once had, days that we once spent in the backseat of our cars reading poets at sunset. It's funny how love can fall out the foreground, get pushed into the back of your mind. We used to twist a spliff and laugh and relax. Now you crying, and I'm trying to find the reasons. So I ask, does forever ever happen, or is it always fade to black?
I can't stay. No, I always gotta go. Playing house, this ain't a home with my soul on the road. I can't stay. No, I always gotta go. Playing house, this ain't a home with my soul on the road.
I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. It's too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy. It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Boy, all that like Keenan. Still got crack, they fiendin'. Flow still hot like Phoenix. Shine so bright, I'm gleaming. This off top, I'm tweaking. Fresh out the rat like Neiman. And I'm still tryna fight my demons. Cause we all gotta act like Tina. That's why I gotta ride with the Nina. Outside, it's a war going on. Make me put my hands on my head like the Macarena. They want you walking on board like Kima. And give an F to you like John Cena. Putting blood on the brand new Beamer. Tryna earn they stripes like Adidas. You get cold when you ride with the heater. It'll turn you to a dog like a Keeta. And expose to a cat like a cheetah. They smoke my partner like reefer. Dímelo porque o no entiendo. Mi gente must really need Jesus. They shed real blood, I never seen the crypt and I believe it. It's too easy. Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. It's too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. It's too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. It's too easy. It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Y'all just talk, don't live it. And just took that route, that seen it. And I'm so outspoken like.
Welcome back, everyone, to the SPL powered by Alienware. Again, if you want to go and get yourself something like what our pros are playing on the powerful Aurora R10 Ryzen desktop, as well as that Alienware 25-inch 240Hz gaming monitor, you can go to smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code SMITEAW. And, of course, thank you again to Alienware for partnering with us. To go and check them out, check out their products, but also leave them a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Alienware and join their global community at alienwarearena.com for giveaways and more. The more I can't tell you about. You have to find that out on your own by going there yourself. And speaking of more, Mifflin, more is not, I guess, what we need to see. I don't know what's going on here for game number 2. The game 1, back and forth. We had kind of discussed the draft being a little more solid for the Titans, but it felt close until suddenly it wasn't. Scary just kind of gets a quadra kill, and then the Titans run the show from there.
Legitimately, the game was so close up until that very last Fire Giant skirmish that I think that you could say that the Valkyries legitimately just lost off the draft. They got outscaled come late game. Hard to deal with a front line inside of King Arthur and Athena. And those are the 2 picks that I thought the Valkyries were going to take for themselves. But instead, the Tartarus Titans able to pick it up for themselves in the 2nd and 3rd slot. Outside of that, we can talk about the fantastic performances that you've already highlighted from Scary D, having an insane kill participation as well as a nutty KDA. We were worried about how well he was going to transition to the jungle, considering how slow of a start he had at the beginning of the year. But let those fears be assured here. Scary D looking incredibly strong.
I mean, this Fenrir and King Arthur combo, like, that's just scary to think about what they were able to accomplish. I think this might be the tear where he was able to go forward with it. That kill onto Ducky, and then an immediate chase down. Only one member of the Valkyries, Zimmelito, survives throughout this one. Otherwise, chased down and eradicated by Scary D here. I just think very fun to watch. It's always entertaining, first off, to watch anyone get a quadra kill, but secondly, to see, I think, a very solid team fight coming down from the Titans there after, like you had mentioned, everything was so back and forth here. I mean, you look at this one, you know, the Fenrir was their last pick, 12-3 and 8 for that one. But Benji goes 5-1 and 12. Reminder, they picked that Sun Wukong over the King Arthur. 0-3 and 12 there for Aurora. That Fafnir, the 0-6 and 6, was picked over the Athena. It just does feel like you said that the draft really kind of fell out for the Valks, and then their play suffered because of it.
But it makes sense, the strategy that the Valks were going for, top to bottom, looking at the draft. It's a run it down, we're going to pull ahead early, leave Ducky alone on an island. Johnny, come over here to duo. Let's utilize this Chiron throughout the early, put some pressure onto the ADC Cyclone Spin, who's playing a not very safe god inside of CERN. Makes sense, but it doesn't pan out that way. Although the game remained largely even up until that 20-minute point, it still was the Titans benefiting from a 2,000 to 3,000 gold lead the entire match. The Valkyries, with this draft, needed to pull ahead significantly in the early to transition themselves into a good late game. Unfortunately for them, that's not what happened.
Well, the good news for them is that they do have a second chance, right? I mean, to be able to come back, at least tie up the set in game number 2 and try to change things around. And, you know, Aggro had said it at the very end there. I don't have the exact numbers because he's been picked up more this week than we've seen in the rest of the SBL this year so far combined. But Zhang Kui, as much as it seems he could be able to accomplish things, and, you know, Hindu went on his soapbox there for Vampiric Shroud and all of the things that can come out of that, it almost, man, it hurts to say this, it almost feels like he needs to be Sunset.
Sunset? He needs to be...
Yeah.
What'd you say? What is Sunset?
You gotta take him out for a little while.
Oh!
Like, stop looking
Oh,
at
that's... Like, look at the... You know what? Let's not... Yeah, I'm not going to look at the sun. Anyway, Titans banning out the Neath first up overall, keeping the strategy rolling from game 1. I've never heard that expression before, Gore.
Man.
We're from the same area. We're both from the Bible
dude,
Belt.
Okay, so I will admit, I think that's more on my mind. So... I've just, like, games will, like, every now and then, like, if they're, like, you know, MMOs or something, if they cycle items or whatever, they'll sunset certain... Maybe, I don't know. Is that a... Chat,
it's
is
like
that a
vault,
thing?
no,
Am I
something.
making up words? Am I making up like,
Oh, is it a
like
Destiny
phrases
thing,
here?
Gore?
Or is that something that other people have heard? I'm confused, dude.
Look, no need for confusion, Gore. It simplifies. We're on the
I'm
P's
lost.
and B's, man. We can just look at the screen here and keep it rolling. Sobek banned out. Ymir and Tiamat on the other side. Look, I think if anything, the Titans can go ahead and run back like an exact same strategy. If the Valkyries are willing to give up so many top picks in the first phase of bans, the Titans don't need to worry about addressing the meta. They can let King Arthur through. They can let Athena through as well. No issues.
And, I mean, top 3 bans, like, pretty much the exact same swap, Sobek and Neath for each other, right? And that's the exact same bans that the Titans had first game. Yanis, though, making his way up there. Yamoja, notably available now. That's what the Valkyries left open to trade that one through. It's a good pickup, I think, to ban that one away. It was just survivable. That's what I've always described Yanis as, right? He does decent enough damage, is good in the middle of a team fight, and you're not going to catch him if you try. So they take that one away. But now, you know, it goes to ask you at this point, Yamoja, King Arthur, Athena, all of these that were all still available. Never mind, ignore all of those. They don't matter. Chiron is what the Titans opt in for first here.
That is early aggression from the Chiron inside the long lane. It's exactly what the Valks were looking for last time around. Now the Titans trying to expedite their pace there. And it does, again, leave available incredibly strong picks for the Valkyries to look at here. King Arthur makes his way through. Yamoja still out there as well. Athena available. There's so much on the table. Last time around, we saw Sun Wukong get locked in the first slot. And blast them up. They're going to go ahead and run it back yet again. It's a good pick. Sun Wukong, generally not bad. The majority of the time you get it, you don't feel too awful about it, but it just feels like they're letting through a lot of pressure here. Sun Wukong incredibly safe, has CC immunity ultimate, has decent rotations, but he can't match the pressure that something like a King Arthur brings.
Yeah, so, you know, we had said this last time around, and I think we're going to say this again. I'm going to imagine King Arthur Athena gets locked in right here, and then it just feels like the last 2 picks from the Valkyries, they get their betters locked in by the Titans, despite having an earlier precedent. We'll have to see if that happens, but, I mean, those are pretty easy bans, right? Like, in a way, like, if you go to the next one, you try to take it away. Not opting for the King Arthur this time around, though. Cucullin going to be taking his place. And admittedly, we've seen a lot of Cucullin, like first pick Cucullins, bans for Cucullin. Like, he has been maybe the most picked that has come through, at least for the solo lane this week.
He has been, and he's got a decent matchup in his Sun Wukong. Anti-heal on the Barbed Spear means that once he goes up into the Somersault Cloud, he's going to have a little bit less sustain. Here's the pick that I thought the Valkyries were going to try and take. Athena getting picked up again by the Titans. This is a god that for the first couple of weeks of Season 8 was not allowed to be played. She's so strong right now because of the buffs she got in Season 8. Confound, now dealing damage, a little bit lower cooldown on the dash as well. She's just great. Global presence, damage mitigation. Why don't you want this god, Valkyries? It blows my mind that they let her through yet again. The Titans come away with an incredibly strong dual lane inside of Chiron and Athena, and Kakulin, who is pretty strong in his own right out of the solo.
Well, now the Zhang Kui locked in again, so we'll at least get him one more time. Now, Mifflin, the first thing that comes to my mind is this almost a salty run back? I mean, what, Set and Chiron are missing. Chiron they're not going to get back. Set still technically available here for the Valks. Is this something that they go back to, like the core you had mentioned, something that if they can just get ahead early on, should be able to find some success? Do you have to, A, ban Nemesis to make sure he's successful, but also, B, is it going to be successful regardless? Like, is he going to be able to find, or are the Valkyries going to be able to find success in their draft?
I think the Valkyries have potential to do so, but it is contingent on winning out the early game pretty handily, I'd say, with a draft like this, if they continue to draft how they did in Game 1. Titans actually banning out the Nemesis themselves, trying to remove a little bit from Johnny's God Pool, and I think that makes a little bit of sense. I was going to go on the tirade saying that Scary D likes playing those Soul Lane-esque gods, the ones that can frontline incredibly well, the Osiris's of the world, the Ravens, the Fenrirs, and things along those lines. Doesn't really like the traditional assassins nearly as much, but I was not expecting them to ban the Nemesis themselves, but it makes sense considering it fits Johnny's God Pool a little bit better. I think that the Valkyries do a good job in this phase of ban. They want to remove a little bit of additional CC. They target the Daji. They don't want Scary D dropping a 12 bomb on their heads again. Might as well get rid of the Fenrir.
Yeah, that's understandable, right? When it's like, man, we got Quadra killed. Like, not a lot of CC immunity that was available for us last game. Fenrir kind of beat us up throughout the entirety of the game, mainly towards the latter half, or maybe even not in the last half, maybe last third, but still really got to pop off and showcase what he has. Makes sense to try and control him. There goes Bellini that walks through. I'm sorry, Bellini, no Fenrir for today, so you're not going to be, well, for this game, I should say. You can see her plop on her bed. This is going to be where things get interesting, though. Both teams require a jungler. We've seen, at least for second pick, it's not too uncommon to push that down to your last pick, so probably a hunter here that comes through. So I'll throw it to you. I mean, Onher's available, Heimdall's available. That wasn't available before. Well, I was going to say, are there any others that have a good matchup versus Chiron, but they get to answer it for you. Heimdall, how well does he fit?
Heimdall can survive up against Chiron, but has a slightly worse matchup than he used to. Used to be once Chiron dash at you, Heimdall would use the Gallarhorn, knock him up, hop into the Bifrost, and ride away. Nowadays, Chiron can just keep that aggression up. Now, knock-up immune inside the dash. The ultimate going to have a very easy time chasing out the Bifrost as well. But generally, Heimdall is one of the safest hunters in the game if you decide to play him that way, and Emilito is a guy that likes to play it a little bit more passive. But the Titans, this is interesting. Kronos is an Emilito god. He's the only one to play it so far here in the SPL, I believe. But the Titans take it for themselves.
I think the only person who I've seen play Kronos is Zeros, which is also on the Valkyrie, so that doesn't necessarily lend to where the Titans might go with it. But I'm going to level with you here. Raven, up to this point, I'd have to check this week again. Don't think they played it earlier this week. 100% win rate for the Titans specifically, something that Scary's had a lot of success with. But Kronos, do you throw him mid up against the Zhang Kui, or, and especially because like everything you just highlighted about the Heimdall, do you throw him over into the duo lane, like Chiron mid, similar to what we saw the Bolts do, what was that, yesterday when they picked it up? They went Chiron Soul or something like that earlier this week. That is a definite playstyle. Do you think the Titans are going to kind of make that swap and harken back to some metas of old?
It's hard to say where I think it's really going to go. If we really want to lean into it as far as player preference goes, Paul has a very large dual background behind him. He used to be a 1v1 main, and he'd play Kronos all the time, so we know that he's incredibly comfortable on this pick. But Kronos would have an easier time farming up and reaching that late game phase out of the long lane. It's a little bit harder to gank over there. It's more of a commitment for the enemy jungler. But if I had to guess, I really do think it is going to be Kronos mid. Earlier today, Paul tweeted out, "I'm building alternate timeline." Well, you can't do that on Chiron, so maybe I'm metagaming a little here, playing the Twitter game.
I saw that, and there's always, every time I see tweets like that, there's that hint of, are they just tweeting this out to meme? Are they going to actually do it? If it's Kronos, do you think he's actually going to do it? Like, does alternate timeline fit better into the Kronos build, at least going mid, as opposed to literally anything else that you could do, whether it was throwing him Hunter or whatever?
I mean, alternate timeline straight up just works on Kronos, right? You kind of essentially have it inside your ultimate as well. So Kronos going to be the god of 3 lives if he does decide to pick it up.
Oh my God, I didn't think of
as
that.
A starter is pretty strong as well for that additional CDR and MP5 that is afforded to him as well. I think that Kronos mid can certainly work, especially with Scary D going towards the patented Raven jungle. It should make up for a little bit of that lack of pressure out of mid. Scary D gonna have to do a little bit of the heavy lifting there in the center of the map. And then Athena, as that global presence, should be able to at least alleviate some of the pressure coming his way as well. But Kronos up against the jungler Tsukiyomi is going to struggle throughout the early. It's very easy to blow up Kronos if you use the Piercing Moonlight just to close gap, and then you can use Kusari Gamma for the damage output. It's such a quick burst that it could deal with Kronos before he gets the ultimate off.
And that's always the danger, right? That's where we typically see Kronos' falter more than anything. It's not, oh, hey, we just killed you outright. It's, well, you popped 4, you stood still for a second, and we burst you as much as we could right there. Guys, they're remaking the game right now, just so you know. We still are getting and working with the players, remaking their lobby. Going to get back into that one as fast as possible. Same picks, so we can continue talking on that at least. And you have mentioned, like, specifically Tsukiyomi being a potential good pick, ideally against Kronos, realistically against everybody, but Heimdall, alongside that Tsukiyomi, are replacing what was that Chiron set from game number 1, with the other 3 still remaining the same. I just kind of want to know from your thoughts, is this still a team that needs an early game lead to be successful, or can they transition into a late game fight versus the Titans the same way that we saw pretty much all of last game, up until that last Fire Giant fight, maybe slightly before, everything was neck and neck? Is this going to be a little more favorable for the Valkyries early on?
I think that the Valkyries have a little bit more potential to win out in the early just off the back of Tsukiyomi if he gets off to a good start, but they don't have it as a necessity nearly as much so. They scale slightly better into the late game with this draft. Zhonghui is still going to be a paragon of team fight presence. Tsukiyomi should be able to finish off kills if Zhonghui isn't capable of doing so. So I think that they do have a little bit better of a chance inside the team fight, but on the other end, so do the Titans. Kronos is one of the best scaling gods in Smite. Chiron has an incredibly strong early game. The global presence of Athena should be able to mitigate early efforts from the Valkyries. I think the Titans, if this game does go longer, 30 or so minutes, should be favored here. They've got more burst potential. They've got a lot more objective burn, essentially with a double Hunter draft inside of Kronos and Chiron, that the Valkyries might want to expedite the pace a little bit, but it's not as important for their draft alone.
It's definitely going to be difficult to do. Late game, like you said, Kronos alone, when you're talking late game, is going to be troublesome and problematic. Athena then jumps into the conversation, the taunts, the setup that's going to be there just for a Kronos, but then also Chiron being in there. It's going to be something very, very intimidating, I think, for the Valkyries to try and take on, guys. But they're taking a little bit to get this game remade, so we're going to go to a quick break. We'll be right back with game number 2. Meanwhile, enjoy the crabs. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for being patient with us. Essentially, you know, the Valkyries, as you know at this point, are playing from Europe. They're just trying to figure out and remake games until they get a server that's favorable for both teams here. And that can be kind of rough when you're playing with 5 people from EU, and that definitely seems to be some of the struggles that they're facing right now. But Mifflin, in the meantime, we did learn that it is going to be Paul playing Kronos in mid. I was going to ask you about it, but you don't get a chance to talk about it. We're going straight to the game. That's all that matters now. Titans versus the Valkyries. Mifflin was here. You can see him. He did, in fact, show up for this. And I did actually end up talking about that too soon. We were getting pulled in. We aren't straight in just yet. Mifflin, you've got like 10 seconds. Go.
But Kronos mid is a double-edged sword. If he's putting the game on a ticking time bomb, if he gets the late game, he should win.
There you go. If he gets the late game, he should win. Let's see if he gets the late game here in game 2.
Well, we'll see if we can even get to late game in the first part, because last game, I mean, did it really get that late is the question. I guess it did with how it played out. Aggro joining me once again for game 2 of Titans versus Valkyries, and similar composition from Valkyries for the most part here, Rye.
Yeah, very similar. Really just the switch up for Johnny, and it is a fairly big switch up in Tsukiyomi coming from set. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a lot easier to play on the outskirts of the fight and then full on commit a little bit later on with a little bit more safety. And Emilito on this Heimdall this time around instead of the Chiron. But I thought the Chiron was pretty key to a lot of what the Valkyries did well last game. That long-range damage ended up being pretty impactful. Emil had some really, really good snipes through corridors in the jungle and secures with that ultimate. Wonder how he's going to do on the Heimdall this time around.
Completely agree. Checking in with the 2 supports again. It's double Sunder this time round. Athena's picks it up. No Blink this time for Aurora. What's the difference there? Do you reckon there's a real difference of why he chose to go Blink first game into game 2 going for the Sunder?
Yeah, I remember that play in mid where they picked up zeros and he didn't die, and then he was able to get a couple kills on the back end. Yeah, that's the reason he gets Sunder at level 1, I think. I mean, Aurora had a couple of Blink engages last game, but a lot of times you can go without on Athena, especially in the early game. You really only need it once the full-on team fight start, and this gives them instant threat on Zero Zhang Kui all game long.
Well, level 2's hit for the Hunters early on because of the benevolence from the 2 supports, and Ducky will hit level 2 a little bit quicker than that of Benji over on that right-hand side. No real surprises there as it stands as the mid laners meet up with the junglers in the middle lane here. It's a first little look at Paul's Kronos today. Talk of the alternate timeline here. I am interested, right, how it works out with Rewind, because I'm pretty sure Rewind could... I'm not sure if Rewind will like go through again, right, afterwards. Would it even reset if you use the alternate timeline first?
No, I'm sure that you would get Rewound to the alternate timeline health. It just gives you more HP, you know, more time of being untargetable, and you get your cooldowns back. But you should have your cooldowns back after you're revived by alternate timeline the vast majority of the time. We'll see if he ends up going it. I think it could be good on someone like Kronos. You give yourself an opportunity to get another Rewind off and get some heal coming from your squad in the meantime.
Well, on that right-hand side, you can see the first totem of the coup goes the way of the Titans, and that's the biggest thing for the solo laners, it appears, according to the Twitter conversations I've seen between solo laners. The focus is on totem of the coup. It doesn't matter if they die, as long as they get the totem of the coup, the team is happy in the early game.
Correct, yeah. I don't care if my solo laner dies for coup. If they got it, then that means that I can stick out a little bit longer and get enough to get my full boots on my reset, so I'm feeling pretty good about my options. And no better proof of that than what we saw yesterday, where Haddix gets soloed going for Totem of Coup, but he got it. And who won that set and that game?
That's a good point.
It was the Bolts.
That's a good point.
So there you go. There's your proof.
Does add up. Oh, interestingly enough, it looks like a different sort of start from Emilito this time. We've seen a lot of the Gilded Arrow as of late, but this time round he's switching things up. I guess the changes to the Gilded Arrow have made that be a thing for the most part.
Yeah, it seems that way. Pretty rare we see the Gilded Arrow. We've seen it occasionally, but no one is really upgrading it anymore into that Ornate Arrow. A lot of times they're selling it for a different 6th item. I wonder if Emilito is going to go crit with this build. I do think that I would still be going crit if I were in ML's shoes, just putting a lot more pressure onto Paul in particular, knowing that you can really threaten to kill him in 3 autos or 4 autos with Heimdall as he scales up. Heim just scales pretty well with crit in general because of the extra damage on his autos, so I think I'd prefer to see Emilito go for that crit build here.
Well, on top of that too, a staff in the mid lane for Paul, which is quite surprising to me. Not seen too much of that as of late. I am wondering where that build's going to go too, funny enough, in terms of, I mean, Ethereal, Gem of Ice. I'm kind of thinking through the tree, and I'm not really sure exactly what you'd end up going for here as one of your first major items.
I guess it would be Warlocks would be my guess.
That's what
I mean, we don't see
too,
that
yeah.
really
Come on.
ever. I don't know. I think that if he wanted to go ethereal, I don't think that starting that uncommon staff is your best starting point. You should probably go with Tiny Trinket or Lost Artifact and then build into it a little bit later, not start out with the staff. I mean, you get a little bit HP with this start, but no mana sustain whatsoever. Seems like he's doing okay in that department, though. I mean, he's still half HP. Using that mana quadrant of Accelerate in the early game really lets you stay out in lane a lot longer.
When you look through the composition so far, there's a slight lead at the moment for the Titans, but you did see the beads forced on Zeros a little bit earlier on. We've not spoken about it since because, well, there's not been another gank attempt, but 20 seconds away from that coming up. However, in the dual lane, Sunder down for Rafa there as the pressure of hitting level 5 first from Cyclone came through and forced him out of lane. So Titans do have control of the duo. Solo lane's pretty much an even beast so far with no jungle attempt or ganks, especially with the coup being on an even keel for the time being. As Paul does head back to base, and it's probably going to be boots, I'm expecting. Yep, full shoes of the Magi for him there. So once again, going for a bit more lifesteal. I'm really surprised about the Rise of Kronos, funny enough.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised as well. I mean, games are going a little bit longer right now. I think that crit coming out of the meta extends these Fire Giant fights quite a bit and makes it take a lot longer for these objectives to go down. So with that in mind, you pick someone up who has really good objective DPS in that Kronos. You bring a little bit more objective damage and that late game scaling that's pretty close to unmatched. But Paul going for this sort of Sands of Time instead of what we saw Emilito go for last time, which was the Conduit Gem. I think that ability to go Charon's Coin and Winged Blade and Gem of Focus, those were all really, really good for Kronos because it just gives him that kite ability and that survivability that you wouldn't normally have. So I'm a little surprised to see Paul go this, and maybe he really is going to go that ultimate timeline.
We'll find out if he does and how it works out for him if we get to those later stages. Scoping on the left-hand side is available, but not being really looked at just yet. Just the Oracles taken away by Titans there. As the dual lane is a frozen endeavor here. It definitely feels like Titans do want to fight in this lane, and that's why they're freezing the lane for the most part. And Rafa will be happy just to soak the experience nearby and allow Emilito to get as much farm as possible. As a Scorpion on the left is taken down. No real invades just yet from either team, but Aurora looking for a cheeky steal there at the tail end, using that reach to his advantage, because it does get classed as a basic attack, I guess, to try and secure that one, but not to be this time round.
Yeah, I think that this fight should go in the Titans' favor. I mean, Chiron just going to have a lot more easy to confirm damage at this point in the game than in comparison to the Heimdall. I mean, Heim has gotten through the worst part of his game. Before you get those Ninja Tabby, his very low base attack speed can feel pretty rough to fight against, or fight with, I should say, in lane. But now that he's got the Ninja Tabby, it's not impossible that the Valkyries could win a fight on it.
A mid-Harpies fight. I've not seen one of these in a minute. Aurora takes a lot of damage, but will escape danger just in time. The Moonlight comes through, though, and Paul ends up dragging Johnny under the tower. Scary D's up, down. Didn't work out too well to really do any damage. And a 3v3 in the mid is Valkyries, who pull the trigger first and get first blood. Bad news is, though, right, did go to Rafa, which I really think they would have loved to see on Johnny or Zeros there.
Yeah, of course you'd rather have it go on one of the damage dealers, but among supports to get the lead, it's not too bad as Scary gets jumped on by Ducky, but just not enough damage. Good presence there from Scary to make sure that he's overhead kicking that Jingu Bang.
Definitely. I'm interested to wonder if, like, Ducky really thought about hesitating there for the overhead kick, or just knew he was going to overhead kick it either way. Right inside, though, it's now Banji collapsed on for a second, but he's got Athena coming through too, and Ducky recognizes the danger quickly that he may have been under there, so ends up falling back as the clone continues to terrorize for a second or two. It is a couple of ults exchanged on the right-hand side.
Definitely means that Benji's going to have a harder time fighting back without that ultimate. Needs it to generate that rage pretty quickly, but Ducky also much more vulnerable now to a Scary D gank. Once that Mystic Rush comes back up and available, could be an option for the Titans jungler.
A lot of options here, I would say, for Rafa this game in terms of being very, very viable against the compositions Titans have here. Underhand tactics is a disarm. I think that could come into play quite a bit in the later stages of this game, especially with Scary D alongside Paul and, of course, the Chiron too, just to try and, you know, remove some of the auto attacks that can come through. Can give him a bit of a window maybe to turn it around. And we'll see how that works out, as at the moment there's not too much invade. It's a lot slower of a pace of a game this time around, Ryan, compared to game one.
Yeah, definitely, and that's where this Kronos pick ends up looking really good for you, right, is when you can afford to go into the later stages of the game, especially with the build that Paul is going for. It is going to be a Warlock staff for him, second item, so really committing to playing this game slowly and methodically. You're going to have a lot of options come late, giving himself that extra HP. It's not too low on power. You get 10% pen. Warlocks is good if you can afford the slow start, and I don't think the Valkyries really have a composition that can punish you for going a slow start. They don't really accelerate into the early game very well. They need some time to start to get those items before they're equally strong. So I think this pickup actually makes a lot of sense.
Oh, Scary got baited by jumping on Rafa there and exploded quickly. That card stun from Zeros was very, very quick. I'm interested in what Zeros is actually maxing here, but look at Benji rotating around the back, trying to find a pick on Johnny, and Johnny under some pressure here as Benji continues to go in. It means the front line is also under a bit of pressure too. Rafa forced to transform. Zeros pops a ghost, all in Benji here as Ducky turns up, and there's the Moonlight coming through towards Aurora too. Ducky continues with the chase, finds a good Tiger stun. The Chronos damage not really enough to prevent the follow-up for the time being, but 3 now kills for the Valkyries as it's Titans grouped up and Valkyries taking the fights.
Yeah, just a bad decision by Scary to kick all that off, and then Benji kind of feels priced into going in order to get something going for the Tartarus Titans, when really he isn't. Just definitely a mistake. We're talking about how, yeah, I think the Titans outscale center around Paul, and that they're going to be in a good position come mid to late game. They don't have to rush it. You don't have to stress about someone three-way splitting
Oh, perfect play from the combo there. Blinking from Scary with Aurora dunking down for the kill on Johnny. And the blue buff does fall, but the damage was done. Aurora can still give chase here. Benji's on the way back too. They may look towards Ducky if they can, but I don't think they've got the cooldowns to do so, seems to be the problem. And so instead, it's turnaround fair play, I guess, from the Titans. As now they look for the blue buff, but they're also taking away the red. And now Paul could be in a bit of trouble here. Will rewind early. Zeros did not have his ultimate available, but that rewind put him in a good position for follow-up. Just couldn't thread the stun on Zeros. Meanwhile, right-hand side, Rafa getting pressured again, but will leap away as Titans strip a bit more of the Valkyries' jungle.
That was a purely offensive rewind there from Paul, because he knew that he would be going right back to where Zeros was running, and that if he would have landed that stun, it could have at least forced the beads from Zeros. But with Cyclone in tow, maybe it could have been enough to kill him, but ends up not really coming to pass. Remember, Paul does have 10% CDR from that Sands of Time, so rewind on a fairly long cooldown, but won't feel quite like an eternity with that little bit of CDR. And the Valkyries really haven't shown that they're going to be the aggressors around the mid lane. They just really have counterpunched when the Titans have gone in around this side of the map, and something tells me that they're going to have Scary on a tighter leash around these mid-harpies than he was before, so I don't think that's going to be a major problem for the Titans.
Well, 35 stacks remaining on that Warlock staff in the mid lane too. Did have some changes, we've not seen it for quite a while, but it does have a bit of penetration on it these days as well. 10% magical penetration, not too bad in the early stages, right? Especially when you're trying to get it, inconsequentially, so to speak, just to give yourself a bit more damage as the game goes on. But more importantly, I think for this item, is just the extra survivability he's going to get from that extra health.
Exactly. It makes him really hard to go on, and we were just talking about Jean-Qui versus Giannis and how that matchup is usually pretty good for both sides because neither one can really kill each other, as Jean-Qui doesn't have the most burst damage in the world. A lot of it is more damage over time. You have that extra HP on Chronos. Now you don't have to be that threatened by just a blink in and an exorcism coming from Zeros, that you can afford to take a little bit of damage and be a little bit more greedy with your rewind. Now you have you bought yourself a better window in order to use that rewind effectively. So I like it. Plus, remember, if he is going alternate timeline and it's reviving you at percent HP, giving yourself more HP does matter.
Well, you can see what happened on the right side. Ducky was looking for a bit of a cheeky look towards the blue buff and instead had to use his blink, and then 4 members of the Titans group up to look at that blue buff and steal it away from the Valkyries. You can see the pings from Valkyries now towards the left-hand side of the map, looking for some remnants in the jungle to take. But red buff's not going to be up for another minute or two at the moment. Goldfree wasn't available at the time. It is now. But the bad news is Titans are here and on the way. However, the trap is being set again. Hammer onto Scary. No stun though, because the torn out from Aurora saved his life. Not long enough, however, because Johnny picks up the kill. But now Johnny could be under some pressure too.
Benji in a perfect position. Aurora on the way as well, but good disengage coming from the jungle until Cyclone puts on the scope and finds the kill.
And Paul back to full health with that rewind too. Take into account Amelito not involved in this fight anymore. Dipped out to the left-hand side. Zeros needs some help from his team and gets it, but Benji will still claim the life of the mid laner. He'll go down in trade, however, and the damage is done where Titans could look for a Gold Fury here. There is still Amelito on the map, but at the moment they're looking at this tier 1 tower, which makes a lot of sense. It's kind of interesting that this could be very similar to what Valkyries did game 1. They took a tier 1 in mid and then looked towards the gold soon after, and it doesn't look like Amelito's going to stick around to try and contest this either.
He's staying for now, but no relics, no ultimate. He shouldn't stick around in this position, I don't think. If the Titans decide they want to kill him, they should be able to do so pretty easily.
Well, let's see what happens there, because 4 members still group. Paul stepping up, happy to do so against the Fafnir. Titans do get it, but do the Valkyries get away? They will, because Titans choose the better argument to just fall back to their own half of the jungle, take the red, take the purple, and just guarantee themselves that lead. That's around 1,200 gold now.
They're sitting in a pretty good spot. Remember, they're the ones with the Chronos in the mid lane, and look at the net worth charts. When Chronos is near the top, you've got to be feeling pretty good about your odds as the game goes on. Exactly. It's a lot of those backliners. You've got both Cyclone Spin and Paul sitting pretty on top of the net worth charts, alongside Benji, who just did whatever he wanted in the midst of that team fight. Really, really created tons of space. Aurora enables him perfectly with that Defender of Olympus.
Credit to Benji as well, because we talked about the beads last game where he really needed it. That time around, the beads against the Heimdall ultimate there really came in clutch to allow him to continue the pressure in that one. And the beads, sometimes you can, just slightly mistime it. You see a lot with Sobek plucks these days, but doing it in that moment really allowed Tartarus Titans to continue the pressure going. So that worked out really well for them now. Purification beads now online, however, for Scary D in the jungle. And we've noticed that seems to be one of the linchpins Valkyries have been relying on a little bit here, Ryan. Grabbing hold of Scary early and trying to burst him down before he can get away.
But he didn't have purification beads before. He was level 11 when that last play started. It started with Blink. Now he's sitting at level 13, has the purification beads. That plan becomes much more difficult when you've got overhead kick, Mystic Rush, and beads to tick off the list before you can really start to take him down quickly in these team fights.
Right-hand Scorpion goes down. That does open the eventuality of a Fire Giant being completed at some point in this game. And we've seen quite a few Fire Giants earlier on this season than previous seasons, at least some attempts, that's for sure. As you said, Scary still farming up in the jungle now, mainly ability-based focus here. Aurora's a bit far forward, but Rafa just can't hit that hammer there, and instead it's Ducky under pressure because Benji was wrapping around the back. Great combo onto him, and the stun does connect, forces the Somersault Cloud, but meanwhile Scary being chased down by Zeros here, but the Ghosts are not going to be in range, now Zero's out of position too far forward. Needs some help from Rafa, has to beat Benji, going to get the knock up, and Paul's going to find the damage at the tail end to pick up the kill, and that's the danger of the Jean Kui. You overextend, don't find the kills, it could come back to haunt you.
Yeah, Zero's probably feeling real good about his position there. He's doing lots of damage. Paul's low, Scary's low. Then Scary ults out and Paul rewinds, and Zero's stuck in no man's land, much like Paul is right now.
Yeah. Unusual for Paul to be like that, in my opinion. Generally, when he makes those decisions, he's in a good spot. Without the beads, though, that Tiger Stun, which, in fairness, Ducky's doing a very good job just lately with these Tiger Stuns, and they've been a real linchpin, I would say, of how Valkyrie CC chains have really worked in their favor. Speaking of CC chains, Amelito escapes one by using his ultimate there, thanks to the taunt out from Aurora to force that, as the duo lane lead for Cyclone is ever so slightly in his favor at 17-16.
It feels like he's got all the momentum, though, on this side of the map. No beads now, no ultimate for Amelito, while Cyclone Spin has both his relics and the ultimate still available. Can't really just teleport away from the damage on Heim like you can against a lot of other hunters, because Chiron's Masterful Shot will follow you no matter what if you get low enough. It will still kill you.
Also, I think the one thing about Chiron, that Giddy Up is a knockaway, so if a Heimdall tries to step on his Bifrost, it's a great disposition tool. I think very, very useful for dealing with some of those engagements too. And no longer knockback immune during that Giddy Up, which is the biggest change that I think is the reason we've seen a bit more Chiron as of late.
Huge difference. I mean, take a look at the top two meta hunters coming into this week. They were On Her and Heimdall, both of whom self-peel or initiate with knockups. Chiron now knockup immune makes a big difference. I think he's got pretty positive matchups against both of those gods. And he's just outright strong. I think people are still kind of on the fence about where the hunter build should be. Everyone's going something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Chiron, you kind of can't go that wrong. If you build him mostly ability-based, he's still going to deal a lot of damage. If you build him more auto-attack-based, he's still going to deal a lot of damage. You can kind of do whatever. You don't have to be as optimal on something like Chiron as you do on some other gods, in my opinion.
First time we're definitely seeing this year more ability-based hunters coming through, though, especially with the prevalent of crit that was around for a while. Don't think crit's completely dead, however, but I do notice we're seeing a lot more ability-based with Transcendence and with Assy getting a little buff recently, for Assy specifically. I think that's one of the reasons extra why we see a couple more of these ability-based hunters. Yeah,
I think so too. The Medusa hasn't really impressed me quite yet, though we've seen her a little bit. I think Chiron is kind of in the middle on that. You can build him a little bit more auto attack base. Medusa more so as well. You can always build hunters auto attack base. That's why they're so good, because they still do the things that they're supposed to do come late game, regardless of what their kit is going to kind of facilitate early on. Cyclone building mostly auto attack here. He's probably going to go chin size after this, and that's where he was at in his build last time around. Wonder if he's going to go with that Bluestone upgrade. Emilito did last game. Cyclone did last game on the Kernanos. Should be interesting to see.
2k gold lead for Titans as now they pull the Primal Fury. 4v4. Solo Lane is out of the fray for the time being. Rafa misses the hammer. Good taunt though from Aurora. Gets 2 sets of beads out of Johnny and of Zeros too. Rafa's transformation to try and push them back a little bit, but as he leaps in, he's forced away immediately soon after. Rest of the team not really involved as the Solo Lanes continue to scrap on that right. Blue buff did go the way of Ducky there, but Titans aren't done just yet at this Fury. They're happy with how this has gone. Aurora still on zone duty. Taunt onto Rafa. Damage follow-up is there too as the Titans get the Primal Fury, and it's only Aurora on the front side here. He may end up going down as the rest of the Titans kind of watch on to see if they can support him, but they don't want to commit just yet, and the dash away from Aurora's good. Oh, and he won't find that Shuriken, but the Moonlight will, and Johnny gets the kill. Aurora for a Fury is definitely worthwhile for the Titans.
Yeah, that's a great call for the Titans to be able to get that Fury and set themselves up for great success whenever Aurora's on the respawn, because they can just go right back knowing that neither Zeros nor Johnny has purification beads. And even without that Giannis ultimate with which to disengage, you see the Titans giving a lot of respect to Zeros in this game. They're waiting for him to use his ultimate, and then they're immediately backing up. They're just disengaging the fight right away. Rafa had a very good stun on a Cyclone that forced his beads. Cyclone probably didn't need to. I think that could have just been a turn and burn situation onto the Fafnir potentially, as Rafa was pretty separated from the rest of his squad. But you know, with Johnny's ultimate as potential follow-up, you don't necessarily want to go in and bait yourself by hitting the support over and over again, especially with where Rafa is in the build. He's sitting pretty tanky at this point. Just if Aurora can keep finding initiations like that, you're going to like their odds.
See, I would have let the Fire Giant call straight away if they realized they had a window, but now going for it at that moment in time, a little bit too late for my liking. The Pyro, though, did even things up a little bit as Rafa going to take a bit of damage here. Doesn't have his ultimate available just yet to transform, but now it's Titans with a power play around the right-hand side of this map for a sec with the health bars of Valkyries looking low. Keep an eye as well, however, on Aurora, who did get Horrific Emblem upgraded this game too, so that could come into the fray, reducing some of the damage done by everybody. Rafa's still the focused target from the Titans here, forced to transform early. Beautiful stun from Paul will prevent Rafa from escaping the clutches as Ducky jumps on him with a Tiger Stun, but he's immediately having to cloud away too. Valkyries lose one and use a few ultimates. Only the carries really have theirs available, and the lack of engage potential now is tricky for the Valkyries as the Fire Giant is started by the Titans.
And they've got much better DPS this time around because of the Chronos, so they have to respect this more.
Benji going in with Scary Need 2, and the Doomsday Squad is there. Cyclone gets credit for the kill, even though the Fist of Fury coming out from Scary Need could have been there too, but Cyclone gets the double with the masterful shot, and that is now a chance of a Fire Giant. However, they'd rather look at Zeros first of all, it seems. Only Aurora really around that Fire Giant going, guys, should we do this? Instead, they'll take the life of Zeros, and then the FG.
Yeah, might as well. That's just more farm for the boys and get a chance to put him on the respawn timer, stop Zero's farm from trying to catch up in this game. And the Titans really just playing these fights really well front to back. They're just taking their engagements on the front line tanks. They aren't trying too hard to get into the back line. If they're there, Aurora's going to taunt them, and they're going to feel pretty good about it. But this is really standard Smite from the Tartarus Titans. We're going to hit the front line with the abilities that we can hit them with. We're going to let Benji create a bunch of space for us. We're going to allow Scary to go in right after Benji, after he forces some escapes to be used or some relics to be used. And then we're just going to hit who's in front of us, regardless of who it is. And I love that the game has been simplified for them. They're not trying to do too much.
I do think the game opened up a little bit more so, if I'm honest, after that Fire Giant attempt from Valkyries. I think the Pyro, like we were saying, was a good call. If they would have got a straight Fire Giant, they could have snuck that away, but the decision to go Pyro into Fire really hurt them heavily in this game now, because Titans, what would they have got really? They had a Golf here and the Fire Giant would have been fine, they would have been even keel, but instead it's now Titans with the Fire Giant, only tier 2 towers remaining for the Valkyries now, and everyone's still looking for a bit more farm on the side of Valkyries here too, when you can see 2 of their carries at only level 18, makes it a difficult task to defend, and Titans do the right thing here in splitting the map apart.
Well, they check it out. It is alternate timeline pickup this time around for Paul on this Kronos, so you've got to kill him 3 times if you want to take him out of this fight. He's already nearly full build, just 23 minutes in.
Well, he gets stunned by Rafa, and sorry, he does get stunned by Rafa as Rafa gets stunned at the same time, but Aurora Cyclone on the left-hand side, be given a window. They're looking at Cyclone Spin for priority number 1, Giddy up away, still has his relics intact for now. Rest of Titans hanging around mid and left-hand side, generally left, as there's going to be minions coming there a little bit sooner as we leave Paul and mid. But that ward in the middle lane there, you can see from Valkyries between the two, just gives vision, so they can always open that door and do something. But left-hand side, Benji getting aggressive, so is Aurora towards Rafa. Rafa's trying to buy as much time as he can. Very late on that ultimate from Rafa, though, took more damage than bargained for. Is still sustaining up for now, but Benji will get credit for the kill, probably with Bluestone on Mystical Male. Meanwhile, Paul in the mid lane combining with Scary to keep Zeros at bay, and Zeros very low against Scary D, and Scary will get the kill with the overhead kick, all the while the Phoenix being whittled down in the mid by Paul. On the left-hand side, Benji takes Ducky. Doomsday is here for the Valkyries as Titans are looking to end the game soon.
Yeah, they've really just picked him apart. Paul going in. He doesn't have to worry about dying here, Hindu Man, because of course he's got that alternate timeline. OP, gotta be, for Paul as he survived because of it. And the Tartarus Titans find the 2-0.
A back and forth game for quite a few minutes there. Titans were starting to pull ahead. The Pyromancer gets taken by the Valkyries, and then the Fire Giant call, and it's going to be looked at, if I'm honest, as the one turning point of that game. Sure, Titans were in the lead, but that Valkyries call was just no good.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, we see it all the time. Teams figure, oh, they know we're here, we'll just take the Pyromancer, and maybe they'll think we're backing up. But if they don't know you're there, all you've done is just announce that you've got members grouped next to the most important objective on the map. They're going to send people to start checking, especially when Aurora has his ultimate. Definitely a bit of a miscue and a miscall there from the Valkyries.
Well, Titans will be a bit more confident now, I'd say, Ryan, about raising themselves up and making it to the playoffs with how this group's looking. Valkyries, on the other hand, bit of a different story. They're going to be there in defeat in the face, going to have to win one of the games against 2 of the more prominent members of the group. We'll find out, though, how that plays out. For now, though, we're going to go to a quick break, and we'll break down that game 1, well, game 2, I should say, and move on to the next set.
Well, you just saw the link right there, shop.smiteproleague.com. Go, you can get yourself jerseys, t-shirts, hoodies, and more. Hats are included in there. I think there's a nice, cool-looking beanie that says SPL on it if you want to be able to get that. Shop.smiteproleague.com. And, of course, thanks to Inside Apparel for all of the cool merch that they make. I personally will admit I'm a little partial to the really bright, brilliantly purple that is the King's hoodie, but I think you should find whatever you like. Also, the purple that's the Dragons jersey. Something's telling me that that's relevant to today. Either way, we'll figure that out a little bit later. Mifflin, after that set, things are really, well, at least interesting down here. Nice kind of long wait there. Time ticks forward for Kronos, and that just seems to go really, really well for the Titans.
Time does tick forward for Kronos. We said it going in there. I tried to choke it out that if they made it to the late game, that's probably where the Titans are going to find their best fruition, and they absolutely do this time around. But the Valkyries get off to a good start in this one. They get a couple kills. 13 minutes in, 4-1. They got the gold tied up, but a couple of flubbed objective calls from the Valhalla Valkyries were easily punished by the Tartarus Titans. And from there, Paul was online, alternate timeline was ready, and the Tartarus Titans never looked back.
In the words of Cyclone Spin on Twitter afterward was GG's to the Valkyries was AFK. I mean, he didn't have to do a whole lot of work to get to where they were successful. It looked really good there on that Chiron, but it was this alternate timeline. A brilliant amount of honesty from Paul. He told you he was going to build it today. He just didn't tell you what on. And I think it worked out well. Pretty much the way you had highlighted it could work here on this Kronos during that picks and bans segment. And just as it gets to late game, we're all reminded of why Kronos is something that you really need to be worried about. You know, I mean, in this case, I guess it was, 15, 18 minutes in onward. 4-1-4 there for him, 3-0-5 for Cyclone. But pretty much everybody on the side of the Titans had a great KDA. I will also note another win under the belt of the Raven for Scary D. A good track record for them. But Mifflin, not a great track record for the Valkyries here if you're looking at the grand scheme of things. We're talking about these group stages right now. They are in a group not just with the Titans, but with the Bolts and the Leviathans. That's going to make things a little more rough around the edges going forward. Actually tied right now with the Leviathans to the bottom, both at 0-1. But remember, everybody plays everybody else once. So the Titans, the Valkyries, will each play the Bolts and the Leviathans next week at one point. And so that is going to be a little interesting to see. Some difficult matches, to say the least. That's not just the only one we have today. Dragons and Camelot Kings from Group B going to be playing their first match up a little bit later. They'll also be going up against the Scarabs and the Warriors next week. But first they have to get through each other. And Mifflin, that should be a really hot set.
It should be, but you know this is going to be a hot set, Gore. It's the last one we got of the week. Jade Dragons up against the Camelot Kings coming up soon. I'm pumped for it, man. It might be my caster bias. I get to be on that one with my good buddy Dave. But instead, we should probably focus in a little bit on what happened in this match. And sure, Cyclone Spin was a little bit AFK, but I don't think Aurora was. He was looking pretty good.
Well, hey, it's good that he was looking good there. It looks like he's going to be looking good. At least pretty soon, we're going to see him on camera. We have him ready for an interview.
Oh, we should. Yes, I'm joined by Aurora. Before we even start this, if you yes, no me, you'll be in trouble, young man. Yeah. Okay?
Okay.
Try that today. Okay?
What if I just say okay?
We'll see.
I'm just kidding.
Okay?
I'm just kidding.
We'll see. I was like, well, I'll specify the questions intentionally. You guys are on a 4-win streak now, which is pretty solid for you. How are you guys feeling, Aurora, with how things have been going for the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, we're feeling good. We're getting better. We had that break, so we practiced during that, and I feel like we've just been improving. So yeah, no, everything feels good.
I guess the confidence probably is a little bit higher now, knowing that you're more than likely going to make it unless Valkyries can upset two of the bigger teams. But then again, you guys have also got big games this week against those teams too. Do you feel the schedule, in terms of like how the schedule played out for you guys at the start of the year, was a rough one for you guys to begin with, or was it just see how it fell?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think our schedule was definitely a rough schedule to start out with, but I think it was good for us because we learned a lot in the first couple weeks. We didn't get to scrim too much, but we going into SPL and until we moved here. But once we moved, we started scrimming, and I felt like we started to improve over the weeks, and we're getting better, and it's good.
And turning our attention to those games, and I mean, Scary D Game 1 and the Fenrir had a great performance there, but it looked like a team effort for the most part. Obviously, it's taken time for Scary to ramp up. Do you feel he's starting to hit that, like, sort of, momentum you're hoping out of him, or is there still more to show from Scary?
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely still more to show from Scary. I think he should have got the pentakill though. That would have been sick. Pentakill for Fenrir.
For Fenrir of all people. The only way it could have got better is it was a support Fenrir too, which you would have known. For the most part then, Aurora, how are you feeling now? What's your goals, or what's your game plan? Are you going to try and get top seed? Are you expecting to get top seed? How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, no, I'm just focused on winning our next set. I think we play on Thursday, so I'm excited for that.
Well, congratulations on the victory today. Thanks for joining me, Aurora. We'll see you guys next week, and hopefully in the playoffs too, if you keep going that way. We're going to go to a quick break, though, and after that, we'll be back for set 2 of the afternoon. It's a big one, and the Dragons are involved.
Thanks.